A black woman walked into Premier Trust Bank to deposit a check. The teller took one look at her, then froze her account on the spot. "Ma'am, this account shows suspicious activity. I'm calling security." What that teller didn't know. The woman she just accused of fraud was Angela Morrison, a federal bank auditor sent by the Treasury Department to inspect that exact branch. Angela wasn't there to deposit a check. She was there to test how the staff treated customers, and they had just failed spectacularly. In the next 20 minutes, that teller went from smirking to panicking, because Angela had the power to shut down the entire branch. This story will show you why assumptions based on appearance can destroy careers, and why treating every customer with respect isn't just good manners, it's good business. Before we dive into this incredible story of karma and justice, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss more stories where prejudice meets consequences. Now let's see how this played out. Who is Angela Morrison? Angela Morrison was 42 years old and had worked for the Federal Reserve as a bank auditor for 15 years. Her job was to inspect banks across the country, making sure they followed federal regulations and treated customers fairly. Angela grew up in Atlanta, the daughter of a single mother who worked as a nurse. She put herself through college, graduated top of her class with a degree in finance, and worked her way up through the banking system. She knew every trick, every loophole, and every way banks could discriminate against customers. One of Angela's specialties was undercover customer testing. She would dress casually, walk into banks pretending to be a regular customer, and see how staff treated her. Banks that passed got good reports. Banks that failed faced serious consequences, fines, retraining requirements, or even temporary closure. Today, Angela was testing Premier Trust Bank in downtown Chicago. The Treasury Department had received 3 complaints about racial discrimination at this branch. Angela's job was to find out if those complaints were valid. The teller, Jessica Palmer was 29 years old and had worked as a teller at Premier Trust for 2 years. She came from a wealthy suburb and had gotten the job through her father's connections. Jessica thought she was too good for this position. She believed she deserved to be in management. Jessica had a problem. She made assumptions about people based on how they looked. If someone came in wearing expensive clothes, she was friendly and helpful. If someone looked poor or different, she became suspicious and rude. Her coworkers had noticed. They'd heard her make comments about certain customers. But the branch manager, Robert Chen, was too busy to investigate. He trusted Jessica because she was efficient with paperwork and never made accounting errors. He ignored the warning signs. It was 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. Premier Trust Bank was moderately busy with customers conducting regular transactions. Angela walked in wearing jeans, a simple blouse, and carrying a regular purse. She looked like any working-class customer. She had opened a test account at this branch online 3 days earlier under her real name. She deposited $5,000 from her personal checking account into this new account. This morning, she brought a legitimate check for $3,000 from her employer, the Federal Reserve Bank. She wanted to see how the staff handled a routine deposit. Angela got in line and waited her turn. She observed everything, how tellers greeted customers, how long transactions took, whether staff made eye contact. She was already taking mental notes. When her turn came, she approached Jessica Palmer's window. "Good morning," Angela said pleasantly, sliding her check and ID across the counter. "I'd like to deposit this check, please." Jessica barely looked up. She took the check and ID without making eye contact. "Account number?" Her tone was cold and dismissive. Angela provided her account number. Jessica typed it into the computer and her eyes narrowed slightly. "This account was just opened 3 days ago," Jessica said suspiciously. "Yes, I just moved to the area," Angela replied calmly. "Is that a problem? And now you're depositing a check for $3,000. Jessica's tone was accusatory. "Yes, it's my paycheck from my employer." Angela kept her voice neutral, watching Jessica's behavior carefully. Jessica stared at the check. It was from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, made out to Angela Morrison. It was completely legitimate. Official seal, proper routing numbers, everything correct. But Jessica had already made up her mind. She saw a casually dressed black woman with a new account trying to deposit a large check. In Jessica's biased mind, this looked suspicious. "I need to verify this," Jessica said, her voice loud enough for other customers to hear. "Please step aside." Angela didn't move. "What exactly needs to be verified?" "It's a paycheck. Bank policy requires verification of large deposits on new accounts," Jessica said, which was partially true. But the way she said it, the tone, the volume, the implied accusation, that wasn't policy. That was prejudice. Jessica picked up her phone and called someone. Mr. Chen, I have a customer here with a suspicious check. New account, large deposit. Can you come to window 3? Angela's jaw tightened. She was being treated like a criminal in front of a lobby full of people. Other customers were turning to look. The branch manager, Robert Chen, came out of his office. He was 45, wearing a suit, looking slightly annoyed at being interrupted. What's the situation? He asked Jessica, not Angela. New account 3 days old, Jessica said, gesturing at Angela like she was evidence in a crime. She's trying to deposit a $3,000 check from. She squinted at the check, the Federal Reserve Bank. Robert took the check and examined it. His expression changed slightly. The check looked completely legitimate. Ma'am, can I see your ID? Angela handed it over silently. She was giving them every chance to recognize their mistake. Robert compared the ID to the check. Everything matched. He looked confused. Miss Morrison, where do you work? I'm a federal bank auditor, Angela said quietly. Robert's face went pale. Jessica didn't notice. She was too busy looking smug, thinking she'd caught a fraud. I'm sorry, Robert said quickly. There's no problem here. Jessica, please process the deposit. But Jessica wasn't done. Sir, I think we should freeze the account until we can verify. Jessica, process the deposit, Robert said more firmly. I'm calling security, Jessica announced, reaching for her phone. That was the moment everything changed. Jessica, stop, Robert said urgently, but she'd already pressed the button for security. 2 security guards walked over. Problem here? This customer has a suspicious check, Jessica said confidently. I want her escorted out while we investigate fraud. The lobby went completely silent. Everyone was staring. Angela stood there calm but humiliated as 2 security guards approached her. Robert stepped between them. There's no fraud. This is a misunderstanding. Sir, bank policy says, Jessica started. I know bank policy, Angela said, her voice cutting through the tension. I wrote part of it. She reached into her purse and pulled out her federal credentials, a Treasury Department badge with her photo, title, and authority clearly displayed. My name is Angela Morrison. I'm a senior federal bank auditor. I was sent here by the Treasury Department to conduct an undercover inspection of this branch based on complaints of racial discrimination. Congratulations. You just confirmed those complaints in front of 30 witnesses. Jessica's face drained of all color. The smug confidence evaporated instantly. Robert looked like he might faint. The security guards immediately stepped back, looking at each other in panic. Angela continued, her voice professional but cold. For the record, the check you called suspicious is my government salary check. It's from my employer, the Federal Reserve Bank, where I've worked for 15 years. The account you wanted to freeze is a test account I opened specifically to see how your staff treats new customers. And you, Miss Palmer, just provided me with a clear example of discriminatory service. Angela pulled out a small notebook and began writing. Let's document what just happened. You, Miss Palmer, refused to process a legitimate government check. You accused a customer of fraud with no evidence. You announced your suspicions loudly enough for the entire lobby to hear, causing public humiliation. You called security to remove a customer who had done nothing wrong. And most importantly, you did all of this while serving white customers at the next window without questioning their deposits. She turned to look at window 4, where another teller had just processed a $5,000 check for a white man in casual clothes with no questions asked. I watched you serve 3 customers before me, Angela continued. 2 white, 1 Asian. None of them were questioned about their deposits. None were accused of fraud. None had security called on them. The only difference between them and me, the color of my skin. Jessica tried to speak. I didn't. It wasn't about. Don't, Angela said firmly. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know what discrimination looks like. I just experienced it. She turned to Robert. Mr. Chen, I assume you're the branch manager? Yes, Robert said weakly. You'll receive my formal report within 48 hours. The Treasury Department will conduct a full audit of this branch. Every transaction from the past year will be reviewed. Every customer complaint will be investigated. And I'll be recommending mandatory retraining for all staff, with a strong suggestion that Miss Palmer be terminated. Angela looked around the lobby at all the customers who had witnessed everything. Several were recording on their phones. To everyone watching, Angela said clearly, what you witnessed today is illegal. Banks cannot discriminate based on race, gender, religion, or any protected characteristic. If you've experienced similar treatment at this or any bank, you have the right to file a complaint with the Federal Reserve Consumer Complaint Division. The number is 1-888-851-1920. One elderly black woman in line spoke up. They did this to me last month. They questioned my social security check like I'd stolen it. A Hispanic man added, I had to wait 30 minutes for a manager to approve my deposit. The white guy after me got served in 5 minutes. Angela took out business cards. Anyone who wants to file a formal complaint, take my card. I'll make sure your concerns are investigated. Half a dozen people took cards. Some were still recording on their phones. Robert was visibly sweating. Miss Morrison, perhaps we could discuss this privately. No, Angela said. This needed to be public because discrimination happens in public, and the consequences should be public too. She turned back to Jessica, who was now crying quietly at her window. Miss Palmer, you made assumptions about me based on my appearance. You decided I was suspicious because of how I looked. That's called implicit bias, and it's a form of racism whether you intended it or not. You had the power to help or hurt people, and you chose to hurt someone you deemed unworthy. That's not just wrong. It's illegal. Angela gathered her things. I'll take my check and deposit it at a different institution, one that treats all customers with respect. She walked toward the door. The security guards moved aside quickly. Customers in line started clapping. The elderly black woman who'd spoken up earlier called out, Thank you, someone finally standing up for us. As Angela reached the door, she turned back one more time. Mr. Chen, you have a choice to make. You can defend what happened here, or you can acknowledge it and fix it. What happens to this branch in the next 6 months depends on what you do in the next 48 hours. She left. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Inside the bank, Jessica had collapsed into her chair, crying. Robert stood frozen, his career flashing before his eyes. The other tellers looked terrified, and every customer in that lobby now knew they'd witnessed something significant, a moment when injustice met accountability. One customer, the white man who'd been served without questions, walked up to Robert. She's right, you know. I come here every week. I've seen how certain customers get treated differently. I just never said anything, but I will now. He took out his phone and started typing a review online. The videos hit social media within an hour. Multiple customers had recorded the confrontation. By evening, Premier Trust discrimination was trending locally. News stations picked up the story. Federal auditor subjected to racial profiling at Chicago Bank read the headlines. The Treasury Department issued a statement. We take allegations of discrimination extremely seriously. Our auditor was conducting a routine inspection when she was subjected to inappropriate treatment. A full investigation is underway. Premier Trust Bank's corporate headquarters went into crisis mode. They issued an apology within 24 hours. We are deeply sorry for the unacceptable treatment one of our customers received. This does not reflect our values. We are conducting an immediate internal review. But the damage was done. Customers started closing accounts. Several community organizations called for boycotts. The NAACP offered to represent anyone who wanted to file discrimination complaints. Within a week, Jessica Palmer was fired, not just for what she did to Angela, but because the investigation revealed she'd treated dozens of customers this way over 2 years. The bank had ignored warning signs, and now they were paying the price. Angela filed her official report. It was damning, she documented. Pattern of differential treatment, based on race, lack of proper training on bias and discrimination managements, failure to investigate employee complaints, multiple customer complaints that were ignored, failure to follow federal equal treatment regulations. Her recommendations included $500,000 fine for civil rights violations, mandatory quarterly audits for 2 years, required diversity and bias training for all employees, implementation of anonymous customer feedback system, public apology and community outreach program. The Treasury Department accepted all her recommendations. Premier Trust Bank would be under federal scrutiny for years. 3 months after the incident, Premier Trust Bank held a community town hall. Robert Chen, still the branch manager, stood before a room full of people and apologized. We failed, he said simply. We failed our customers. We failed our community. We failed to see our own biases until they were exposed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to do better. The bank implemented new policies. Every customer interaction was now recorded for quality assurance, anonymous feedback boxes in every branch, quarterly reviews, by independent civil rights organization's scholarship program for minority students studying finance partnerships with community organizations. Angela's story became a case study in banking schools. Her training video, showing what happened and explaining why it was wrong, was watched by thousands of bank employees across the country. 1 year later, Angela received an award from the National Banking Association for her work combating discrimination in financial services. In her acceptance speech, she said, "I didn't want to be humiliated that day. I didn't want to be questioned, suspected, or have security called on me. But I'm glad it happened where I could do something about it. Because for every Angela Morrison who has the power to fight back, there are thousands of customers who don't. They just suffer in silence." Banks hold enormous power over people's lives. Access to financial services is crucial for economic survival. When banks discriminate, they don't just hurt feelings, they hurt livelihoods. They prevent people from buying homes, starting businesses, building wealth. Discrimination in banking perpetuates poverty and inequality. What happened to me was wrong. But what happened to all those customers before me? The ones who were questioned, delayed, humiliated, and turned away? That's the real tragedy. I hope my story encourages people to speak up, to file complaints, to demand better, because banks work for us, not the other way around. Jessica Palmer never worked in banking again. The discrimination on her record made her unemployable in the financial sector. Last anyone heard, she was working retail and had moved back in with her parents. She gave one interview to a local paper where she said, "I never thought of myself as racist. I was just trying to do my job. But looking back, I see how my assumptions hurt people. I wish I could apologize to everyone I treated that way." Robert Chen kept his job, but barely. He spent 2 years rebuilding the branch's reputation and proved himself through action, not words. He became an advocate for diversity in banking leadership. Premier Trust Bank paid the fine and implemented every reform. Customer satisfaction scores at that branch went from the lowest in the region to the highest. Turns out, treating people with respect is actually good for business. Angela continued her work, conducting undercover inspections at banks across the country. She became one of the most respected auditors in the Federal Reserve System. But she never forgot that day at Premier Trust, the day her humiliation became someone else's education. The story teaches us several lessons. Never judge people by appearance. That casually dressed person might be the most powerful person in the room. Assumptions based on bias are dangerous. They don't just hurt others, they can destroy your own career. Power comes with responsibility. If you have power over others, as bank employees do, you must use it fairly. Speaking up matters. Angela could have quietly filed her report. Instead, she made the incident public so others would learn from it. Change requires accountability. The bank only improved after facing consequences. And most importantly, respect isn't about who people are, it's about who you are. Jessica treated Angela badly not because Angela did anything wrong, but because Jessica had prejudice in her heart. That prejudice cost Jessica everything. If this story taught you something or made you think differently, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. We share real stories about justice, discrimination, and people facing consequences for their actions. Drop a comment. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination at a bank or business? How was it handled? Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss when justice catches up with prejudice. Thanks for watching, and remember, treat everyone with respect because you never know who they might be. See you in the next story.